we've been told a lie, that our memory, our intelligence, our genius is fixed, kind of like our shoe size. And through my experience of doing this for the past 2 decades, nothing could be furthest from the truth. You know, people have unbelievable gifts inside them. They're just not shown how. I always thought it was interesting that school would teach us like what to learn. Like those subjects that are important, math and history and science and Spanish, the what to learn, but never on how to learn. You know, how to focus, how to concentrate, how to be creative, how to think for yourself, how to read faster, how to remember things. Like maybe it should have been the 4th R. Remember reading, writing, arithmetic, but also recall, because there is no learning without remembering. And Socrates said that. But how I got started on this is I actually grew up with learning challenges. And a lot of people don't know that. But when I was in kindergarten, I had a really bad accident and I had a head injury. And it left me feeling like I was broken, that my brain didn't work. And I had these focus issues. I couldn't remember things. And it took me extra 2 years to learn how to read. And I struggled, you know, privately and then also publicly. And, you know, when you're that age, you get very self-conscious.
Sure.
You know, you become very introverted, very shy. You don't want to connect with people because you feel like there's something wrong with you. And so that was my academic life. You know, I just worked so much harder. And I don't know if people watching this can relate, but just, you know, struggling with overwhelm or overload, too much to learn, too little time, and it stresses you out. And you're like, why can't I do this? Why is everyone else succeeding so much faster? And I have to do, you know, all this, like, not even fair.
Right.
And that's what happened.
Wow.
And,
so that's kind of early on made you want to then master it, since you were having such a hard time.
It did. I mean, I think our struggles really could be some strengths, and you know this.
Of course.
You know, like, you know, when challenge, you know, with these kind of challenges come change, you know, and problems become, you know, help you progress. And so when I got to college, I remember freshman year in college, I wanted to start fresh, and I thought that I could really make my family proud because they sacrificed a lot. And but I was doing so poorly, and I took all these classes, and I thought I would do better and have a clean slate, but I actually did worse. And I remember I wanted to quit school, and at that time, you'd appreciate this, a friend asked me to come visit him and his family out on the West Coast, because I was on the East Coast, and he was like, I'd go out there. I was like, yeah, I'll just take a weekend, get a little space from school, because I was thinking about quitting. And when I get there, the family is extremely successful. And I don't just mean financial. They had an amazing home on the water, but they were happy. You know, they were givers. They were learning all the time. And the father, before dinner, asked me these kind of questions. We were walking on his property, and he asked the kind of questions you would ask somebody who just started college, like how's school, and you know, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I broke down crying. I was like, you know, and to a stranger I just met like, you know, 10 minutes ago. I said, I'm ready to quit. School is just not for me. I'm not smart enough. And he's like, well, why are you in school? You know, what do you want to be? What do you want to do? What do you want to share, if you will? And it's funny when you're not asked a question in life, you know, it takes a moment to pause to come up with an answer. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like when you're asking questions, and no one's ever asked me those questions before. And when I started to answer, he paused. He said, wait. And he takes out of his back pocket, I swear to you, like a journal and like a diary. And I always thought like 12-year-old girls carry diaries,
Sure,
and diaries. And he tears out a couple of pieces of paper, and he makes me write down all the goals, like of what I wanted to do in my life. And something very powerful about taking pen to paper and just writing like those dreams, your aspirations down. And after maybe 20, 30 minutes, he asked me if I'm done. And I maybe have 40, 50 things there, which is like a bucket list. It was before I knew what a bucket list was. And I start folding the sheets of paper thinking I'm done with the exercise, put it back in my pocket, and he grabs them from me. And I was like, I freaked out because like on that was like
your
everything.
Life.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't even know who this guy is, and he's very successful. And he starts to just read it. And I'm so intimidated. And I feel
loud?
No, in his mind.
Yeah.
And I feel this small because everything, I didn't know somebody was gonna look at it, right? And he looks at it and he says, Jim, and I don't know what he was gonna say because this guy's very successful. He says, Jim, you are this close to everything on that list. And I'm just thinking, there's no way.
Wow.
How could it give me 10 lifetimes I couldn't put a dent on that list? And then he goes like this.
Ooh.
Yeah, and he says like as if this was, you know, the key here. And he takes me into his home, and it's this beautiful home. He takes me into a room I've never seen before, and it's wall to wall, ceiling to floor, covered in books. I mean, I've never seen like a library in somebody's house before. And he starts grabbing these books. You love this. He starts grabbing books and starts handing them to me. It starts to pile up really, really, really high. And when I start looking at the titles, because I'm curious, there are these biographies of amazing men and women in history. and some really early personal development books, like Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, and Power of Positive Thinking, Norman Vincent Peale, and Psycho-Cybernetics, and all these books. I'm just like, and then I kind of get an inkling of what he wants me to do with these books, and he asked me to read like one of these books a week. And I'm just thinking, and I say to him, there's just no way. I just told you I have all this schoolwork.
You're what, 19 now? Or
I'm 18 years old.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's no way I have all these, I can't even finish one book. I have these reading challenges, and I have these learning challenges, and I have all this schoolwork. And he was like, Jim, he said, he looked me right in the eye. He said, Jim, don't let school get in the way of your education.
Ooh, that's powerful.
And I didn't even realize that's a Mark Twain quote. This is like, a couple decades ago. And I'm just thinking, wow, and it hit me like that. But still, I'm like, you know what? I still can't do this because I have all this work I need to study. And then you know what he does? He takes out that list, which he still has in his possession, my dream list, my bucket list, and then he starts reading it out loud. Every single thing, line by line. And I get chills thinking about it, because there's something about watching a man who you just met, who's one of the most successful people that you've met, and he's incanting and putting it out to the universe out loud, your dreams.
Sure.
And it's very unnerving. And honestly, Lewis, a lot of stuff that was on that list, and I think about it, it was things that I wanted to do for my family. These are all things that my family, because I mentioned they sacrificed a lot, like a lot of hardworking people do. And I want to do things for them that they couldn't do for themselves. It's not their fault. It's because we all grew up with a 20th century education that prepared us for a world that doesn't exist anymore. That 20th century world of working in factories and working on farms, doing manual labor, because the school system back then, which is now, it's like one size fits all, assembly line, cookie cutter, don't talk to your neighbors, sit quietly by yourself. That doesn't work in the digital age anymore. So right now, when we're talking about the brain, how important the brain is, we're not paid for our brute strength. We're paid for our brain strength. We're not paid for our muscle power. It's really our mind power. And so the challenge is where, your brain is this unbelievable supercomputer, but it doesn't come with an owner's manual. I decided to study this subject called learning, like learning how to learn. I started to pick up every single book I could on brain science, adult learning theory, multiple intelligences, focus and concentration, things early works by, like on flow and stuff like that. And in a very short period of time, 60 days, I swear to you, it was like a light switch just went on, and I started to understand things for the first time. I would sit in class and actually, because I can't tell you, growing up, when someone's talking to you and not understanding, it doesn't make sense, you're not making the connection, things there, and then all of a sudden you're focusing, all of a sudden you're remembering things. I started reading faster, and I started getting better grades in less time, and it started transforming my life. And the reason I teach this to this day, because this is 2 decades later, is after you have that kind of awakening, you can't help, with what you do, share that greatness with other people.
Of course.
And one of my very first students, I'll never forget, she's 18 years old, a freshman. I teach a speed reading program to teach anyone to read 2 or 3 times faster with better comprehension. But she struggled for a few days, and then that same light switch went on, and she ended up reading 30 books in 30 days.
Whoa.
Yeah, can you imagine what books you would read if you could go to Amazon right now, pick out 30 books, and know in 30 days you own that information?
What are some things that people can do just right away to increase their comprehension and just speed it up a little bit, so that they are able to stay focused long enough throughout the book?
It's amazing what people could do, because here's part of it. It's motivation plays a big role, first of all. You mentioned things that you're interested in. Yeah. This girl, I wanted to ask not how she did it, but I want to know why she read 30 books in 30 days. And I find out that she paused, and she eventually told me it's because her mother was dying of terminal cancer and was given 60 days to live. And the books she was reading were books to be able to save her mother's life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Talk about motivation. I just got chills. Wow.
It's hard for me to even talk about, because my memory is so clear of these events, and not just because I'm a memory expert. It's just, it takes me back, because at that time, I'm 18. I just wished her luck. I'll say prayers and said, but what do you do? And then 6 months later, I get a call from this young lady, and she's crying and crying and crying for minutes. And I find out that they're tears of joy.
Wow.
And I find out that her mother not only survived, but her mother's really starting to improve. Doctors don't know why or how. The doctors actually call it a miracle, but her mother attributes it 100% to the great advice she got from her daughter, who learned it from all these books.
Whoa.
And those kind of things, that's why it went into my body that, that learning, that if knowledge is power, learning is a superpower. If there's one skill to master in the 21st century, it's the ability to learn rapidly. You know what it is? They call it in the military a forced multiplier. A forced multiplier is like input goes in, but you get exponential output from it. It's like optimism. Being positive is a force multiplier, right? You know, and Colin Powell said that. And so certain things like learning how to learn, like meta learning or improving your memory, improves everything. It improves your business, improves, like, you know, you can remember people's names. You can remember sales presentations. You could remember things about a people. Because, like, for example, it's hard to show somebody, for people who are watching this, they're entrepreneurs, right? And they're wearing a business development hat. You know, it's really hard to show someone you're going to care for their business, their future, their family, their health, their fitness, whatever you're selling them, if you don't care enough just to remember things like their name.